Okay, so I'm here to present about the PointSense Plant product. I'm going to be doing this a little bit differently. What I plan to do here is actually talk about some of the main features of the software while showing video clips on the slides themselves. And then at the very end, what I wanted to do was give a real-time video of going through the process, doing some piping, creating Plant 3D models, doing some structural steel, etc. Okay, so the overall goal for the software was to get users from point cloud to design software. And these are your piping design packages. But we need a way to sort of bridge that gap. And PointSense Plant is that software that does that. So you go from point cloud to using our software to getting those results into your design package. And then from there you create all your deliverables, your isometrics, your bill of materials, orthographics, etc. So what is PointSense Plant? Well, like I just stated, it's supposed to create intelligent plant objects out of point cloud data. Now this is catalog driven. We use industry standard specs. We also have ways to import your own, which we'll get into. But essentially it is intelligent objects being attached to the point cloud. One of the best things about it is that it works directly in AutoCAD, any version, not only Plant 3D, but it also works with the native Autodesk Point Cloud engine, the RCP engine, and for the older releases, PCG. And the last thing that you should definitely remember about PointSense Plant, it's awesome. So I'm going to go through some of the key features of the software, and we'll start from sort of workflow beginning to end. And the first step is, the integration with the catalogs. And this is just going to be a brief overview here, but we will get into more detail on each one of these sections. We have a much better visual interface than in years past, not only with AutoCAD, but with VirtuServe. We have an intuitive way to find these components using pattern recognition on the cloud. And then we've actually added a feature that will let you do a single tie-in point instead of having to model either a full line or a portion of the line. So if you just need a tie-in point, we have a routine for that. Then from there, what we do is we take it to Plant 3D, or for other products, we can give you intelligent center lines, export data in the form of tagging. And then we have structural and equipment. So we'll be getting into each one of these topics in order of the workflow. So we'll start with the catalogs. We have a standard set of catalogs that we provide to the user. These have all your major material types, ratings, etc., from 150 to 2500 for North America. Obviously carbon steel, stainless steel, etc. All your major fittings, everything like that is already provided by Kubit. We even provide a list of your more common or popular PIP standards. What we've added is the ability to actually create catalogs from any spec. This includes flange piping, PVC. If anyone's familiar with the Plant Exchange website, where people actually upload and share different specs and catalogs, I've brought in a number of those for like ductile iron, cast iron, those kind of fittings. So we have those, and not only do we have the information, but we actually have it with its true appearance in the latest version. If you have CADWorks or AutoPlant specs, you can use the Plant 3D spec editor to convert them and then bring those into Kubit automatically. And the same thing goes for structural steel. So we have AISC, CISC, and DIN standards. And I've also seen people bringing in various other catalogs, and I myself have created some Unistruct catalogs for customers in the past as well. So as far as the visual interface, and this was kind of touched on earlier by Scott, one of the drawbacks in the past, especially working directly in AutoCAD with no extra aid, is that the visual quality of the cloud depletes as you add more points into the drawing. We're happy to announce that this is really no longer the case. It's really taken on a level that you can see instant results and verify things without having to orbit, pan, etc. Now this, what you're looking at here is VirtuSurf, and this is a bubble view or a planar view, and this is extracted from the data, and we construct it in a way that appears photorealistic. Now the big thing with this is that it actually has 3D data on the photo. So if you were to click on the surface of a pipe, for example, it would send AutoCAD that 3D coordinate. So you can use it in the middle of our routines, you can use it in the middle of AutoCAD routines. If you have other third-party software, you can use it for that as well. As far as accuracy, I put here that's better than a 1/16 of an inch. That's actually probably being a little bit modest. It really depends on the scanner resolution settings, but for most phase-based scanners, you can probably get something closer to a 24th to a 32nd of an inch on an average scan set. The higher resolution you scan, obviously, the higher density of points, the better the accuracy. One of the major things about this as well that truly helps in an actual project situation is a scan map. And you can see it here on the bottom left of this screenshot, but you can see each scan location, and you can also see where you're currently looking. So as you zoom and pan and those kind of things, your viewpoint indicator is going to change. So if you're looking at an object and you want to see it from the other side, you just look at the scan map and you see, okay, I'm looking southeast. I need to move to a southeast scan. So you just click on a different scan. It pops up and shows you where you're at. So this is the first video here, and actually this is a new feature we have exclusive to 2015. And this is called Scan Navigation Mode. We have this ability because of the new RCP engine giving us each scan position in AutoCAD. So if you right-click on a scan and say Isolate, and then you right-click and say Navigate to Scan View, you get a nice view from within AutoCAD. But there's a big problem here. When you zoom or pan, you lose that focal point. You lose that positioning of the scanner. And you have a couple of problems with that. One is that the data starts to get cluttered visually. And two is that you're not able to see or points start stacking on top of each other. So we added a scan navigation mode, which you see here. I just activated it. And now we're looking at the data without losing our focal point. And you can see here it's almost like a makeshift bubble view directly inside of AutoCAD. And these are actual points, so all you have to do is use your 3D object snap directly to them, and you can work directly on the cloud. Now anyone who's looking at that right now, I guarantee you're thinking, I can't believe that it looks this good inside of AutoCAD. Well, it does. And the other thing is that if I click on any surface there, since I am in this locked focal position, I know for a fact I'm getting a point right on that object and on nothing in the background. Now this is the sort of meat and potatoes of our software. This is Walk the Run. And this is where we do the majority of our pattern recognition and analysis on the pipe runs. This is a semi-automated approach, and what we mean by that is we allow the user to choose which part of the line they want to run and which direction they want to go. And then what we do is search the cloud and offer previews of the cataloged items directly on top of the data. We use this approach so that if you don't want to model entire area, you don't have to. And also, if we're doing automatic extraction of everything, you basically spend more time at the end playing cleanup. So with this here, we allow the user to do it right the first time. And it's a little slower as far as manually going through the line, but with the software always reading ahead and always finding these patterns directly in the data, it's an intuitive approach that lets you see the line as it builds. Now, two major additions to this version are the realistic fittings for all fittings, flanges and valves especially. With valves, if you have an actual valve block or a valve graphic representation, we will show that to you on the cloud. And even if you just want to use a generic version, like a kind of the 3D cones, you can do that as well. But you can see here the gate valve has a hand wheel. You'll see actuators. You'll see the arrow and the check valves, things like that. The other thing that we added as far as catalogs are some of the extra fittings. Like I said before, flange piping, but also OLETs, laterals, Y strainers, things like this. They're all in the product, including crosses as well. Now, one of the main benefits to using this on a project is that we have an insertion method that will get you out of a bad situation. And the way it works is essentially at any time you can choose to insert by points around a circle. And it doesn't have to be on the object itself. Maybe you can't see it you know, if it went behind a pipe rack or dipped behind some equipment, sometimes you can't see the object. But if you can go anywhere down that line and choose points along the circle, it'll give you that insertion method. And I always tell people that, you know, a piping product or a software product is only as good as its worst option, because if you can't get past a certain hurdle in a project, well, the software is not doing its job. The other thing as far as insertion methods that's been vastly improved is that each fitting now has an intelligent insertion point that you can toggle. And for example, if you have a flange valve, you can actually insert by end, or you can insert by either back of face on either side of the valve. So every fitting has its insertion point intelligent. Oh, how did that get in there? So here's the major problem dealing with as-built design and point clouds, or I'm sorry, greenfield design and point clouds. So your design packages are expecting something to be perfect, brand new. You know, it's not expecting you to give a realistic model. So for greenfield to match with the brownfield, we have to do certain things to the model. Your Plant 3D product or whatever piping design package you're using is going to expect your center lines to match up. It's going to expect everything to be collinear, and it's also going to expect all of your fittings to be perfect as far as their catalog definition. So, you know, your 90-degree elbows need to be exactly 90, not 89.9 or 89.8. And the center to end lengths also have to match. So we need a way to make this possible. So this right here is sort of an exaggerated version of these center lines, but hopefully it'll illustrate the point here. We have a tool called Apply Constraints, and its job is to take the entire line and to match things up and fix them automatically. We have two versions of it that we can get to more detail in a different presentation, but essentially what it does is make sure that all of your different axes on the pipe run, all of them have to line up, and then all the fittings have to kind of line in place in between them. The other thing that we have to do with this is make sure that we do it in a way that Plant 3D or your piping design package will accept. Anyone who's used Plant 3D knows that, you know, as soon as something is just barely off, you're going to get the dreaded water drop. So the goal of this software, or of this routine right here, is to avoid that situation. Now the other added benefit to this is it allows you to do walk the run faster, because you know that Apply Constraints will fix the line for you. Now we're not saying, you know, go ahead and, you know, just use your left hand and don't look at the screen. What we're saying is that when you understand that Apply Constraints is going to make sure that your elbow is at that perfect intersection, it lets you go a little bit faster around that corner. You don't have to stretch pipes all the way to their welds. You don't have to make sure that T's are perfectly rolled. So all these things actually get fixed with Apply Constraints. So if you can see these center lines on the left, you know, essentially what we would be doing is straightening them up and then optimizing that center line. So the next step for this, and probably the most important step for getting deliverables, is exporting these to actual objects. So what we're seeing here is a pipe run that we've exported to Plant 3D objects. You saw that in real time. It converted those objects. And then what we can do here, since we now have the intelligence and we're inside the Plant 3D package, is we can generate an isometric. So what I do is just highlight these lines, or these fittings, generate the isometric, and then you can see right here, full ISO, full bill of materials. Everything is actually reading your spec. Now the other thing that we can do with this is to start adding new design to existing components. So here all I did was highlight the pipe, I hit the plus symbol next to it to continue piping, and then I can you know, start adding my new design. And from here, you know, you'd probably take it into Navisworks, do some clash detection, that kind of thing. Now for people not using Plant 3D, we have additional ways to export the information. We have database objects, and we also can just create 3D solids if you're just looking for presentation and clearance checks. But also we have intelligent center lines. Now these center lines have every object labeled. They have the start, center, and end points for each fitting along the line, and you can take those into, let's say, CADWorks or AutoPlant, use your router line, design lines, and flush the objects through. This also works for MEP as well. If anyone's using MEP, you can take the center line, right-click on it, and choose a Convert To option, and choose any object out of your catalog to create those MEP objects. We are working on ways to export into more products directly from this view. Now this is one of the cool new features we've added. This is a tie-in point routine, and it gives you multiple options to insert these tie-in points. So the one I'm choosing here is that I want to choose multiple points around the flange OD. You can see here I'm just using VirtuServe, clicking those points, and then what I do is I click points on either back of face or front of face. Now it's up to you, and it's based on what you have access to, but I think that that's probably the most accurate method, and it's duplicated or duplicatable, if that's a word, by multiple users. So it doesn't matter if the designer is, especially talented at finding the right point. All you have to do is give a minimum of 3 points around any part of that flange OD and a minimum of 3 points on the back of face. You can see here it labels the flange, gives you the rating, it gives you the coordinate information, and then it gives you the tilt and angles for all of your X, Y, and Z. Now, steel probably has the largest upgrade in functionality compared to the last version. We finally added the steel detection feature. You can see here that all you do is click 2 points on a piece of steel. It goes through a catalog of 13,000 components in less than 10 seconds and continually reorders it in terms of what we see as being most likely. Now you see a preview at the entire time, so you can always verify that the result is correct. Now here I'm doing the same thing on this other piece here. Just click 2 points on the steel. You get a nice preview of the cloud data on top of the member that we think is the right fit, and then all you have to do is click any 2 points on the steel and let it extend out. Now this is the best way to get all your members on here, and what we're going to do in the next step is actually take these and start doing some post-editing. And what I mean by that is, having the ability to create a grid and having the ability to extend these objects either to another piece of steel or to a specific point in the point cloud. One other thing I'd like to add to this is you do have the ability to create custom profiles. I actually did this for a client recently with the Unistrut, as I had mentioned, and as long as you have a 2D profile, you just select that object, it will add it to the catalog permanently. Question: can the steel detection feature actually detect awesome? Unfortunately, not at this time. Just kidding, it definitely can. So let's talk about the Appliance Trades feature. This is a massive grid that was sent to us from a client. You can see all the pieces are in line, but they're slightly not extending to each other or not matching up. And right there in real time, we took that entire grid and matched all their center lines to an optimal intersection point. And this works with more than just 1 or 2 pieces. You can have 5, 6 pieces that meet up at a single joint. We'll still be able to optimize those center lines. The second step I did here was to do an export to SDNF. And what this does is it allows you to take this information into some of the other structural packages. ASD, Advanced Steel, Revit Structural, RESA, these are all programs that accept the SDNF import. Now, the final sort of major piece to the software is tank analysis. And it has a couple of different outputs. The first one is that you can have a 3D solid model. You can also generate a new point cloud where it's been unwrapped, and then you can color code it by deviation, which we'll show. You can also export the data to Excel, and that'll be the next step here. But it allows you to take volumetric calculations and or surface deviations. Now, the major improvement to this part in the new release is that we now give you an independent horizontal and vertical increment. A lot of people like to have the vertical increment a lot lower, like 1/8 of an inch, and then they want to have the horizontal increment, a lot fewer. Now, this is an ASCII file that was brought directly into Excel. It took, 5 seconds to import the data, and it gives you information at each height along that interval and along the axis around the circumference of the tank. Now, if you have deadwood that you need to remove, we add that as well, and it'll either, you can either remove or add volumes depending on that. It'll show up in this report, and then you can do your project lines or projection lines inside of Excel. Now, some of the other things that you can do, or some of the other outputs, is one is a 3D Polyline Grid that has each specified grid labeled with its deviation either in front or behind that perfect plane. We have it exaggerated here to make it more human visible, but each one of these grid squares is labeled with its difference off of that flat surface. On the bottom left, you can see the unwrapped cloud on top of that grid, and then the bottom right, that's where we show the flattened point cloud, where we've color-coded it based on that deviation. You can also do an insert legend very quickly. You set the increment, and it'll actually label the deviation that each color represents. So what I'd like to do at this point is play a video and talk you through it. This is real time, no editing, and this is me going start to finish, modeling some piping, some structural, etc. So this right here is a cloud directly inside of AutoCAD. We imported it through Recap. And in this case, my first step is to just isolate a scan, navigate to scan view, and then we're going to use kubit scan navigation. Now what this does, like I showed before, is it allows you to kind of work in a makeshift planar view directly inside of AutoCAD. So I have the catalogs loaded. I have my structural catalog loaded as well. And all I need to do is go from any pipe, pick 2 points on it to give it a direction to start. At any time, you're going to see this preview right on top of the data. And then when I switch to the next orientation on the line, it's going to give me a preview of the catalog object on screen. As soon as I accept it, you see all of the piping runs up to that fitting. And you can see I just basically do this over and over. Now the software will look ahead, so it's a matter of, you know, if you can see the data quickly, just go ahead and click 2 points, let the software find it, then it's going to go through the catalog and try and find what matches up to that part of the point cloud. And you know, this is real time, so this is accurate, this is, you know, true catalog data, and then at the very end we're going to create Plant 3D objects directly. And all I have to do here is on this pipe rack, I'm just going to stretch it out. If I wanted to, I could switch to a different scan position to continue the piping, but here I'll just finish the run. And at any time you can turn off the cloud to verify what you have, but I like it here because you can actually see the modeling right on top of the cloud, and you're kind of looking for that sandy appearance on the surface of that solid. That's how you know that the solid and the point cloud are sort of sharing the same space. If you see too much cloud data, generally that means that the solid is a little bit behind it, and if you see too much solid, that means that the cloud is a little bit behind it. So what I'm going to do here is just pick 2 points here, and I want to show inserting a flange. And if you pay attention to the dark red line on that flange, this is how you can actually toggle between insertion methods. So I'm at front of face, I toggle to back of face, and then any point on that back of face is going to give me that right location because we're constraining it to that pipe axis. And then here, since it's fitting to fitting, I'm just going to add the valve. We don't have to worry about gaseous because that's automatically taken care of in the export. And then all I need to do here on this next pipe is the exact same thing. 2 points on the pipe, don't worry about the weld, toggle my insertion method for the flange, and then any point in the back of face. I always tell people if you're looking for that right flange insertion, you're doing good if you can see every single bolt in the cloud data. So those are those 2 lines, not to mention the line that we did before that. And I'd like to go ahead and run just a couple more here. And the reason for this is I want to have a nice sort of complex line to do for the export Plant 3D. Now you can export everything at once, but I want to show this one line so I can generate a nice isometric for you. And you can see all I have to do is 2 points, no welds, or don't worry about the ends. And then here at the T, same sort of thing, except I'm just clicking points on the branch piping. Now, all we need to do from this point on is go ahead and put our flanges on the end, and then after this, we'll have the line ready to do apply constraints. Now, if you remember from the previous slides, the point of apply constraints is to fix all of the sort of the micro errors in the center lines or in the fittings. And, you know, through time and through thermal expansion, through vibration, wind, you know, just freezing and heating and all that stuff, your fittings are going to start to warp. And they'll warp, you know, in a small amount, but still, it's enough of an amount that your design package will either give you water drops or it won't even see the fittings as being connected. I'm sure everyone here has generated an isometric where each fitting came out on its own isometric It's not fun. It's kind of a nightmare. But at this point, all I have to do is run apply constraints. It heals the line, and then we'll be ready to take this into Plant 3D. Now, what you saw me do on that T there, I didn't have a good view to insert it. So what I did is I did the specified points around a circle, and I actually used the weld on the other T there. And since that's in line with the original axis, it actually put that T right where it needed to be. All right, so I have all of that piping finished here. The next step is going to be fixing that line and generating the Plant 3D. Now, before we do that, I am going to put in a couple of pieces of steel, and we're going to start with the Detect Type feature. Now, this is real time. We took a full catalog and compared it to the cloud in that speed right there. Now, we also have a feature that doesn't really get explained in the video, but we have an eraser tool. It sounds kind of funky, but what its job is to get rid of noise data, because a lot of times, especially on structural, you're going to get that kind of triangle of noise where the laser kind of deflected right off of that edge. If it's affecting the search results, you can actually just move your mouse over it, have it erase it, kind of like Photoshop, and it'll regenerate its search. It's a really nice feature to have. Now, at this point, I already know the exact piece that I'm working with, so what I'm doing is just clicking a point on each piece of steel, letting the software find it, and then extending it to the regions of that steel member. So I've got one more piece here for the left to right beams, and then I'll go ahead and do the same on the other ones next to it. So we're going to do Detect Type again. This is actually a different size, and if you're ever not sure, just do a Detect and it'll tell you what it is. There's a very nice overlay showing the cloud data with the actual pattern we're using, and then I'm just going to extend it, click any point along that plane, it'll extend the steel to that spot. Now on the piece on the left, what I did is I kept it, I didn't extend it all the way, and I did it that way on purpose because I want to show you later that we're going to be using an editing tool to post-edit these beams. But you'll see on the piece on the right here that you can actually, I'll actually extend it all the way down. Now, if you see the shifting there, or it'll be more evident when we do a longer piece. If you look, I extended it pretty far down, and then I did what's called a retry. And what it does is it takes that new length and actually checks it against all the data along that path. And I don't know if you can see it in the video too well, but it actually shifted it up, a good 1.5 inches. And the longer the piece of steel, the more reliable your axis will be. So we've got the steel done here, and I'll go ahead and show you how it looks without the cloud data. And then what I did here, if you can notice on the piece on the left especially, they don't quite line up. And this is where we're going to be using applied constraints for steel. Its job is to take all these pieces and create a centerline grid. Now the other thing I do here, and this is kind of just to show people if you're having an issue where you don't see the steel very well, or it's just a nightmare to see in the data, you can actually even take these pieces, and I did a copy selection and arrayed it up to the top row of the grid. And what we're going to do from here is take those new pieces, which definitely aren't accurate because we didn't even fit it off cloud data, and then we're going to apply it to the grid using applied constraints. So it's a nice way to get pieces of steel in that you couldn't even detect out of the data. So here I choose all the pieces. Again, this is real time. It took all of those and applied them to a single centerline grid. Now I should mention that each steel member has the ability for you to shift which part of that is being designated as the centerline. For example, a lot of people want to put it on top of steel, or maybe you want to have it in the absolute center of a channel piece. You can do that. So now that we have the steel done, I want to show you some of the post-editing tools here. We have more to it. You can extend beams to other beams if you want to create, an intersection. But here all I did was choose all the pieces of steel, and I just clicked the point at the end of the pipe rack there to extend all the pieces. All right, so structural is done. Now what I want to do is get this stuff into Plant 3D and generate my deliverables. So what I'll do here is do apply constraints, choose any object on the run. If you see it light up as green, that means we see it as being connected. And then all we do is choose the correct strategy, say start apply constraints, and it right then and there made sure that everything lined up perfectly. So now all I need to do is export to Plant 3D. You see the objects change to Plant 3D. You'll get the water drop in the end of that flange just because nothing's connected to it, but that's normal. And then what I'll do here is generate an isometric right off of those fittings. Now, normally I would recommend using a professional, or I should say, you know, an actual production ISO template. I'm just using a quick ISO here, but you can see it generated it. We'll jump into that ISO, and you see it's got all the information you need, all the coordinate information since it's registered data, and then, of course, your bill of materials. The only thing that I would add to this is that you have the ability, obviously, to add piping to it. You know, to add new design to it. And then since we are compatible and we're giving you Autodesk objects, working with the Autodesk engine, you can take these results directly into Navisworks, 3D Studio, Inventor, Revit, etc. So hopefully that gave you a good idea of the actual workflow. Again, I'm not a member of Hollywood, so this was real time, no editing. And you know, just to kind of recap everything. PointSense Plant is designed to be fast, intuitive, accurate, efficient, and of course, awesome.